Yeah, razors.
On beans.
So that. Very cool.
You are ready.
Welcome to the September 4th, 2024 meeting of the Transportation Committee. My name is Jason Promowitz and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight we are joined by Assistant Manager Brendan Berth. This meeting is called to order at 7:02 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their camera on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you may raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. I will be taking minutes tonight. I'll be following up on the recording. But in the future, we have a sign up sheet for taking minutes. If others would please sign up, go for a future meeting. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Michael Cohen.
Present.
B. Desmond.
Present.
Maya Donahue.
Present.
Rock Friedman.
Present.
Jason Fromowitz.
Present.
Miriam Roth is not with us tonight. Larry Shire.
Present.
Gabe Turzo is also not with us tonight. Jerry Weinstein.
Present.
Okay, I don't see Hader. And Eric Goldberg.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Beautiful. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you adopt to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. See the objection. Oh, yes. Sorry, before we move them. We are going to remove the co-naming honor of Steven Sondheim. We didn't have any update from the applicant. They're still working on getting in touch with the estate for their opinion on the matter. So yes, seeing no objection, we will adopt the minutes. All right. Sorry, we'll adopt the agenda. Moving on to minutes, the minutes from our July meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. With the committee, if you object to the adoption of the July minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objection, the minutes are adopted and they will soon be available on the CB6 website. For June's meeting, those are just being final finished today. We'll distribute them and vote on them for adoption at the next meeting. Okay. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Many members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand. I will identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. All committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. Chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us of technical difficulties that you are having or state in writing, like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. All right, so first off, before we get into the agenda, I just want to welcome Mia, Michael, and Eric, new members of the committee. Michael is a new member, public member, and Mia, who's a new member of the board altogether. So welcome.
It's Maya.
Maya, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Just
Thank
before
you
we
for
get too far
Yes.
along with Mia.
All right, so we actually were discussing ways to make our meetings more efficient. So we were gonna change things up a little bit by starting off with our report from the Department of Transportation to make sure we have time.
Except I don't see Colleen here.
All right, so we had very good intentions in doing so.
But we can have that again next month.
Alrighty, we could. We'll have her, we'll jump to her if she comes in late.
Yeah.
All right, then, since we don't have Colleen, let's move on to number 2, which is discussion of proposed Link 5G kiosks for 201 East 45th Street. And then next we have the location on 800 Third Avenue. We have someone, do we have somebody from, no.
Okay, so, it would have been Office of Technology, yeah, OTI, Office of
OTI?
Technology and Innovation. The board office did ask if a representative from OTI could come. And they said that no one was available tonight, but if there are any questions on either of the Link 5G kiosk locations, that we can send those questions to them.
Okay, I give a little bit of an overview then. Office of, I'm sorry, what was it again? It doesn't matter. Tech Innovation has comes to us.
Yeah, Office of Technology and Innovation.
Technology
OTI.
and Innovation. So we have the opportunity to comment on the installation of new Link kiosks. If you're not familiar with Link kiosks, there's 2 forms of them. They are the early iteration V1 of them is the sort of rectangular things that are displayed on the screen there. They display advertisements, digital ads on both sides. There's a tablet in sort of the small middle that allows for access to some information, as well as like a phone and ability to call 911. Then there's V2, which they are working on rolling out slowly and replacing some kiosks and selling them in new other locations, which are these 5G kiosks. They have a slightly different design, maybe appreciably different design. They're quite a bit taller. Brendan, do we have the picture? Sorry, I probably should have had you.
Picture of,
The schema of what they want the 5Gs to look like.
I forget.
I think
whether
it's in there if I'm not
Is
mistaken.
it? I don't.
I forget whether this original email has this
I'll try to find something while we, once we get into the discussion. So these are a bit of a different design. They have a much taller sort of cap with a 5G antenna. The latest iteration of these seems to have advertising as well, in addition to the sort of antennas piece. Again, I'll try to pull up a screen as we start off, or a screenshot of them as we start discussion. But we have 2 locations that these are proposed. First, we're discussing 201 East 45th Street, which is shown here and is right around the corner ish from us. Over the summer, we had an executive committee, a similar application, the first time that one of these 5G kiosks has come to us for comment, and we elected not to provide a response, basically just that we didn't support it or weren't opposed to it. There was a little bit more of a narrow ask from what was asked of us in that, for some reason in that request, they were asking about its impact on the historic district that it was being proposed in. And so given the very narrow scope of what they were asking for, that was part of why we elected not to comment. We had the same choices here. We could either support the 5G kiosk here, we could oppose it, or we could say nothing. We don't have the same bounds that we had in that last one, where they were only asking for the impact on the historic district. So in theory, we could object for whatever reasons we wanted to, or support it for whatever reasons we wanted to. I will open it up for discussion on, I don't really have a strong opinion either way. I will open it for discussion on, let's keep it, we could talk about it generally, but we should specifically focus on the one in the middle. just separately talk about the other, if there's any location specific concerns. Jerry,
I would put it in the form of questions that I would like them to get back.
yeah, so that's certainly,
So two thoughts. Cause I have some familiarity with this, but setting that aside. I've never been clear, even with what I do know, how this can be part of the city's emergency response. To whether or not it's a hurricane or something, do those go down? Is there redundancy? Perhaps Michael knows. The second question would be, I've always been a little quizzical, I don't know. I never got why they didn't use the preponderance of these and create a true mesh network. Instead of like these one-off single nodes, so that you're building something for people who have, less than broadband and so forth. Anyway, those are my two thoughts.
Michael.
Actually, I have a question about the kiosk, Lincoln with the 5G thing. I was looking at a covered map earlier of 5G coverage, and it's pretty good 5G coverage in this area. Like, I understand that with 5G, we could get better cell coverage, but I wonder, like, what happens in the event of a power outage? It's like the Lincoln with these powered by the grid. They need an alternate power source. Could they be powered by like solar panels or something?
Yeah, I remember during one of the hurricanes, how we all went to Google headquarters. And they were providing various things and they had generators and et cetera. And I'm wondering if we have in theory, the capacity to have these as nodes during a disaster.
So I think all those are interesting questions.
Yes, I know, they're sort of expensive.
I will try to narrow us down
Yeah.
into specifically the request about installing them in these locations.
Mhm.
Sounds like there's interest in discussing these as a program more broadly.
I'm trying to hijack it deliberately.
Yeah. I'm supportive of bringing someone in to answer these questions. I think it might be productive. It sounds like there's interest. If regards to
I'll
those
say nothing
questions, yeah, if we're okay tabling the broader program, yeah, I would suggest we wait to kind of have some broader discussion about what we want from the program.
And Jason, I also have more general interest in what the program's capabilities are. And since they appear so different than the current Link NYC kiosks, naturally the question is, what do they accomplish? How do they accomplish it differently? I think we're all fairly familiar with what the existing kiosks can do. I think they're well designed and they're capable. They've been fairly well maintained, and I just have
So
a question.
if you'll turn around, I have pulled up.
Yeah.
I think this. I'm not sure if this is a real image or a rendering, but either way, this is
Well,
my
in
understanding of
in any case, what a lot of neighborhoods have complained about is, why does this look like a sequoia tree? That's my term for it. And
Be good if it
what's-
did look like.
what's going on up there among the panels that are several stories above the ground. Speculating this might be a way of controlling autonomous vehicles in a network, providing them with capabilities of keeping a whole fleet of vehicles from crashing into each other. I really don't know. If there is utility that is in service of the public, well then maybe the appearance can be tolerated, but without greater justification, it looks plug ugly.
I agree with you on I don't particularly like the designs of them. Mia, right? Maya, okay, I got it right.
It's
Maya.
okay.
Mine means she spins, among other things. It's very, very cosmic name. I'm saying that so he's gonna improve it in his brain.
For some reason, when I looked at it, yeah.
It's okay.
I'll get it right. I promise.
He's named after a whole civilization.
Yeah, I agree. It's not very pretty looking. And if the 5G coverage of the city is fine, I don't understand the purpose. Are they like combining it with the link? Cause those things already exist. Like, I don't also understand like why they're trying to combine them, cause I think the links that we have now work fine. Also, if they're gonna add more advertising, I'd kind of be opposed to that, cause I like the fun facts and the baseball scores and stuff like that. I feel like that's more community oriented than all these advertisements. You see them on taxis, going down to the subway, all that kind of stuff. I think we need to be bombarded with more advertising.
And sometimes they show the arrival time of buses.
Right.
Like,
So it should be a mix of those. That's what they have in the, sorry, in the existing ones today.
Yeah.
Is a mix of
That's true.
advertising and sort of public service message is, I can speak a little bit to my thing of why this program is being changed and why they're being replaced. And also, I know a little bit of, I have a cursory understanding of 5G networks and why they're necessary. So in terms of why the 5G kiosk, why they're changing this 5G model, my understanding is that the revenue that was promised with or forecasted for when in the original Link program was not realized. The revenue is lower than expected. And the primary way they were funding the free Wi-Fi that and the tablet was through the advertising. And given that they weren't making the revenue on the advertising that they had forecasted, they expanded to include the 5G towers, which they're able to rent out and earn revenue on to the cellular carriers. So I think that's the why. I don't have a good answer for why they look as they do, and I also hate the way they look, and I think they could have, I'd like to understand why they couldn't have accomplished the same thing without
Is
looking
it-
hideous.
Sorry, you can go.
In terms of the 5G towers, and why they might be needed, given that we have good coverage.
Right.
Not an expert in 5G by any measure. My understanding is that, there's a capacity limitation, and so you basically need a lot of towers, more towers. You need a density of towers in order to, it's not just covering the area, but it's about being able to like provide the necessary bandwidth. So despite us having like 5G coverage throughout much of the city, you might not have the 5G capacity, and there's a need for towers, depth, yeah.
What happens as the technology evolves and like this can be put underground or 5G is obsolete, then what do we do with the towers?
Yeah, that's a great
Thanks,
question.
exactly.
I mean, I don't know how modular these are. I suspect they're not. Maybe they are. It's a good question for them as a broader
Right,
question.
because it will happen.
But that is the key change, and I wasn't aware of that till you just said it, is that this is going from sort of a public service sort of program into one that is more of a revenue generating program. In the sense of, well, I'm saying the advertising, but now they're expanding the revenue streams through this new thing by
Also,
having the 5G towers.
they are maintaining the Wi-Fi, I will
When
note.
people use the Wi-Fi, I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I have used it myself.
I mean, hey, it's great if, I was curious if it
how
actually
much
is
does
used.
the
I've never used
Wi-Fi
it.
let you do?
I think it's broadly unrestricted.
Okay, so it's not just like,
call.
okay,
But anyway, I think it's interesting, like proposal, and they're doing it, and.
I'll make the argument for them to advocate a little bit.
No, I'm in favor of it. The space exists right now. They're not putting in new towers. I think 5G coverage is something that we want, and why not have the city get some additional revenue from it?
Yeah, so that was the point I was gonna make, is that they do serve a public interest in the 5G. I suspect the vast majority of our community and members of the committee and the board if they don't rely on 5G today, they will in the very near future. Connectivity is a big part of our modern day lives, and being able to have access to high-speed internet on your phones, increasingly in your homes as well, through there's somewhat of a movement to replace like landline internet service to 5G wireless connectivity. So, just broadly providing internet service to the community, it does serve a public interest. I believe it serves a public interest in that regard. B, I see your hand, Larry, that will come back.
Yeah, so I really have two questions. One is the general question of, the strategic purpose of this. I think you articulated some of it. I think there is a revenue aspect of it. But I think since we're going ahead with this, it really would be helpful to hear from the agency as to where they're going instead of us telling what we think they're doing. So I'm a supporter in extending this as a generalized discussion. But in addition to the two locations, have we heard from any of the community of concern about the locations? I would like to go to something specific about them to see whether we should deal with the locations or just not deal with the issue until we deal with the more general issue.
Brendan, have you heard anything?
We have not heard anything about these two specific locations. I will say, just broadly speaking, that there have been other parts of the city where there have been concerns about 5G kiosks, but that's not to say anything about
Can you say what the
anything in our
concerns
district
are?
specific. You're saying?
What were the concerns? Yeah,
Uh,
CB8 doesn't.
yeah, I would need to
You'll
look
think the
back.
typical.
Yeah, I would need to look back to see what the concerns were in other parts of the city.
I know.
To
Is
get
it
more
like
of the
cosmetic
specifics.
or like government's control?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to know if OTI has a protocol about the release of this information. Are we the first stop of many or the last stop?
I believe they've been in front of other boards.
But even within each community board, is there a notice that's going out to the public that's gonna be affected in, the immediate quarter mile?
So that's part of what this is the notification to the community.
Cause I noticed it was the 28th. The public comment period through 90 days.
What was that? Sorry, to do.
60-day standard public comment by extending it to, so the request is extending it to accommodate summer schedules. We're making exceptions to the standard 60-day public comment by extending it to 90. And that's from OTI.
Sorry, so then Brendan, when does that get us that the comment window closes?
So,
October 28th, it's in there.
yeah, I was gonna say, I believe it said in,
Okay,
what was that?
so we do have the opportunity to kick this and see if we can get them into
And
October.
even the full board, yeah.
Yeah, Larry, go ahead.
I have a very basic question as to why this is necessary. The idea that, yes, we need to expand bandwidth is something I can accept. But how this fits into the existing scheme of off-street antennas, which were designed and they operate in kind of a honeycomb arrangement where antennas will communicate with each other
Yeah,
from
that's,
building to building. And you could increase the capacity of those antennas. How does this on-street arrangement work with that? Or is it intended to replace that arrangement where public lands are used and the carriers will no longer have to pay rent for the use of private property to locate their antennas?
Yes, my understanding is, first of all, I have no objection with these locations, perfectly fine for me. And my understanding is unless we object, we don't need a resolution. Maybe I'm wrong about that. We could just kind of do nothing and
That's an
let it happen. And that would be perfectly fine for me. If, when we do get to the general part, I really like what Larry said about the bus times. I think that's really important. People walking by and say, oh, this bus is coming every 4 minutes. I can just hop on this. I think that's super helpful information and it should be like a default as far as I'm concerned, rather than the ads. But anyway, my 2 cents.
thank you. We have a member of the public that would like to give the floor to. Lauren, you will have the floor in a moment. You
Okay,
may,
Lauren, you should be able to talk.
Hi,
Go ahead.
thank you. Yes, I've been learning a lot about these larger towers. One that they have a shorter width that they cover, so they need more to produce a consistent uh range. And they are they are far less effective and efficient than the wired broadband we already have through our landlines. And also, uh, these particular towers have proven they don't hold up very well in high winds. And also that they produce far more radiation than they do of the carrying of the 5G service. So they would require lots of maintenance. Um, there's been concerns in other part of the cities of the design of the towers that they uh, that they're quite top heavy. So there's concern for public safety with these around, in our sidewalks, such. Um, but a major concern is that these towers are being put up without having the let's say the studies, the prerequisite studies. They're going around all of these studies regarding environments and biological effects and various other effects. They're being installed with all kinds of permissions.
Thanks. I just want to kind of wrap your comments up. If that's okay, just so we can move on to other things. Any other last points you want to make? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to Odette.
Yeah, Odette, you should be able to speak.
Hello, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. I'm Odette Wilkins, and I'm a technology attorney, a transactional attorney, and I also head up the New York City Alliance for Safe Technology. There was some question as to what other community boards have done, and there have already been 16 community boards that have voted for a moratorium or for disapproval of the 5G towers until more information was gotten from OTI or whoever with respect to the adverse health implications of electromagnetic radiation. Also, with respect to 5G and whether it actually is designed to meet a capacity need for future demand. When that question was asked of OTI and City Bridge, they said that it was proprietary information. So if the entire purpose of having these towers is to bridge the digital divide, and people are saying, especially in Community Board 8 and other areas, where they're saying that they don't lack any service, they don't have a gap in service. Why are they being put in their places? And that's because it is revenue generating. So they're saying that it's proprietary information. If the whole purpose is to bridge the digital divide and to provide service when there's purportedly a gap in service, why would they not want to share that information with the public? So that sort of undercuts the whole argument for having these 5G towers to begin with. And also the Wi-Fi is not meant for home. It's meant for people with mobility. It's for people on the street. So it's not bridging the digital divide at home at all. All the other services are going to be subscription services. So the Wi-Fi is designed for the street, and that's what City Bridge has been saying. And in terms of the adverse health implications, I think that really needs to be looked at because the FCC was found in 2021.
That I appreciate you bringing the health concerns. You mentioned that already. Again, I just want to keep the meeting going. Any last minute?
Yes,
points from
I
you?
want to say that the FCC has not complied with a 2021 court order to review the 11,000 pages of scientific studies showing harm within their limits. And they have failed to comply 3 years later. So the jury, so everything is, it's not clear that these guidelines that the FCC has for their emissions is safe. So these cannot be seen as safety guidelines anymore, but really a safe harbor for industry to prevent them from having any legal liability in case people do get hurt. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks very much. Yes, appreciate your comments. Okay, so I think our next steps are to invite OIT,
OTI.
OTI, to next month's meeting, and we could potentially discuss the resolution then, Jared.
I mean, Colin, I would recommend you to invite the company this one.
To invite Link or City Bridge rather. Yes, I
agree.
supported that. Brenda, do you have something to?
Yeah, I was going to say that, when we invite OTI, I can sort of compile a list of questions from committee members as well as from the public. And send those along to OTI, so that way they have something to go off of as opposed to just wing it.
Yeah, or if they can't make it, at least hopefully they can.
Yeah, well,
provide us
yeah.
responses. Yeah.
Yeah, even if they can't make it, we still have questions to answer.
Yeah, all right. Anything else from the committee before we move the agenda? All right. Just quickly, Brenda, can we pull up the Third Avenue location just as the next, just to make sure we touch on both locations?
Yes, this is the 800 Third Avenue location. For the record, the kiosk would be where this current Link NYC item is. So it's over here.
Yep. Okay, anybody want to bring up anything else on this specific location that wasn't already discussed? Alrighty, let's move the agenda then on to number 4. Colleen hasn't joined by any chance, has she?
No.
Okay. Let us move on then to number 4. Next we have discussion of a proposed co-naming on the southeast corner of East 44th Street and 2nd Avenue in honor of Otto Warmbier. And I believe we have Ms. Lee on to speak to that.
네, 안녕하십니까. 저는 지난 2008년 탈북하여 대한민국에 살고 있는 탈북민 이소연입니다. 현재 저는 인권 활동가로서 북한의 열악한 인권 실상을 알리고 여성 탈북민들의 정착을 돕고 있습니다.
Hello everyone, my name is Lee So-yeon and I have been living in the Republic of Korea since defecting from North Korea in 2008. I'm working as a human rights activist dedicated to exposing the harsh realities of human rights abuses in the North and helping female defectors settle down in society. For those of you who have watched the documentary film Beyond Utopia about human rights situations in North Korea, I'm the guilty mother from the film who had to leave her son when defecting to South Korea. After attempting to escape the North, my son was sent to a political prison camp where he has endured countless hardships. In response, I have been actively involved in efforts to rescue my son and to bring his story, along with the broader issues of inhumanity occurring in the country, to the attention of the international community. My goal is to raise awareness and issue warnings to North Korea. So one day in May, I managed to reach out to the families of Otto Warmbier, who have endured similar suffering. Otto, a student at the University of Virginia, was detained in North Korea in January 2016 while on a group tour. He was coerced into making a public confession tearfully merely for removing a poster from a hotel wall and was subsequently sentenced to 15 years of forced reform through labor. In June 2017, when he was returned to the US, he was deaf, blind, and in an unconscious state and died a week later. In December 2018, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. ruled that North Korea had taken Otto hostage, subjected him to torture, and deliberately caused his death. The judge stated that North Korea brutally tortured Otto to extract a forced confession, and through a so-called trial, used Otto's extended sentence as leverage against the US to further its diplomatic goals. Otto Warmbier was a young man with a bright future ahead. By his sophomore year, he had already earned all the credit necessary for graduation, and had he not been detained in North Korea, by the summer of 2016, he would have been interning at an investment firm in New York, a dream he had long aspired to. Tragically, North Korea shattered the dreams of this promising young man. Otto's story is not unique. Many others are still suffering similarly under the North Korean regime. It continues to perpetrate severe human rights abuses, including torture, public execution, chronic food shortages, and restrictions on even the most basic rights to freedom. The annual country reports on human rights practices released by the US Department of State has expressed grave concern over these abuses and highlighted that Pyongyang has yet to provide an explanation for Otto's death. So did you know that North Korea has its UN mission here in New York? It is located at 822nd Avenue, which is only a few blocks from the UN headquarters. In 2019, New York Councilman Joe Borelli first proposed renaming the street near the mission after Warmbier to pay tribute to him. However, the proposal has not made significant progress due to a lack of majority support from the congressional delegation of New York. Nonetheless, New York Mayor Eric Adams has announced his support for the renaming if the council approves it. And former secretaries of state have also expressed their backing for the proposal. John Kerry, the US Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, who served as the Secretary of State in the Obama administration, stated, North Korea must see the name of this young man who's still remembered here in the UN, New York, every single day. Esteemed citizens of New York, I urge you to support the swift passage of the Warmbier Way for these important reasons. First and foremost, it will significantly raise awareness about human rights. New York is renowned worldwide as a beacon of freedom and justice. By enacting this bill, New York City will be able to reinforce its commitment to human rights protection and international justice. This bill will not only highlight the human rights in North Korea, but also foster a deeper understanding of global human rights concerns. Additionally, it will serve as a reminder of the tragic story of Otto Warmbier and the atrocities committed by North Korean regime to every American and tourist who passes through this street. So second, passing the bill will send a strong message to North Korea and other countries that violate human rights. Renaming the street, which is at the center of New York City, especially where the North Korean mission to the UN is located, will certainly serve as a strong political message. It will be a symbolic condemnation of North Korea's actions and signal international community remains vigilant about those violations. By highlighting these issues, we will increase pressure on the North and contribute to holding it accountable for its actions. This initiative echoes the renaming of the street in front of the Saudi embassy in Washington to honor Jamal Khashoggi in 2022, a dissident journalist who was murdered in 2018. Third, the bill is crucial for honoring those who lost their lives without having their fundamental human rights protected. It will serve as a tribute to Warmbier and other victims and ensure their stories are not forgotten. Nearly 7 years have passed since Otto's death, and his story is at risk of being overshadowed by time. Many younger generations are unaware of how an innocent young man was detained and perished in North Korea. This tragedy is a stark reminder of the human rights violations that should never be overlooked. By pushing for One Beer Way, we commit to remembering those who suffered under oppressive regimes and to preventing future victims facing similar fates. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story from afar. As a mother, I'm deeply pained by the loss of Otto. I've come here today to speak out against the unjust death of Otto and the story of my son, and to highlight the plight of those who continue to suffer. Otto's family and I are committed to fighting against North Korea and ensuring the victims of the regime are remembered and honored. We ask for your support so that Otto is not merely a name, but a powerful symbol of justice and freedom. His smile, passion, and bright future will forever remain in our hearts, and his story will never be overshadowed. Let his sacrifice illuminate the enduring values of human rights and freedom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll start us off with a question. Have there been any contact with the Otto Von Beer's family? Have they expressed their approval or interest or opinion on this renaming?
네, 지금 이 사안에 대해서 혹시 오토의 가족들하고 서로 연락을 해보시고, 그리고 그분들도 동의하시고 한 사안인지.
네, 지난 6월달 뉴욕에서 제가 오토 본 비어길 지정에 대한 청원을 뉴욕시에 청원을 넣고 또 대사관 앞에서 여러 가지 각종 시위를 비롯한 활동을 할 때부터 오토 본 비어 가족하고 지속적으로 연락하고 있습니다. 오늘도 교통위원회가 열리고 또 지금 청원을 지금 해주시는 많은 분들이 이러한 활동들을 오토 본 비어 가족하고 지금 같이 이번에 그 뜻을 모아서 같이 진행한 부분이 있습니다.
Yes, we have been in contact with the Otto family, and they are well aware of the progress and the current status of this petition. I went to New York last June to submit a petition, and I also staged a protest in front of the embassy. And back then, we have closely communicating with how this issue is progressing. And they are well aware of today's meeting and our other activities to make this possible.
Thank you. All right, I'll open up to the committee. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the proposal?
Yeah, if I could just make a quick, first of all, sorry for your loss. It's horrible. So sorry about that. Maybe just a question for Brendan, maybe it's worthwhile just reviewing what the our guidelines are for street naming.
Thank you. I intended to do that.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
But do you have those handy? I have them actually right here, if you don't.
Yeah, just give me a moment and I should have them, it's
On the committee page.
Yeah, it's on the transportation committee page, so. And I'll share them. And I'll also share them on screen so that anyone watching from home can see.
Yeah, Brett, thanks for pointing this out. So we do have these guidelines that the committee previously had passed a resolution to identify these guidelines as to how we should evaluate applications for street co-namings. So as we're discussing this and considering the request, we should keep this in mind. They are displayed here to opine on. Anything that?
One thinking was what is the connection to New York? And I think they kind of made that clear that this is the North Korean mission. So it's similar to the issue we faced last time with Jamal Khashoggi. So there is relevance, which I didn't understand before listening
We've
to
created a
this.
precedent.
But I think there is relevance here.
I'll come back to you if that's okay. B, recognize you, please.
Thank you. So I do agree, we did establish sort of a precedent last time. But I do have a question. Since you're naming in the area of the United Nations, I may have missed your comments, but is there support from the United Nations or comments from the United Nations about such co-naming? Have they been involved?
네, 그러면은 유엔이 여기에서 역할이 어느 정도 되는지, 그러니까 유엔도 여기에서 동의를 하고 있는 것인지 지원을 해주고 있는 것인지 거기에 대해서 유엔의 입장이 어떤지 말씀해 주실 수 있을까요?
현재 그 유엔에서는 북한의 인권 침해 문제에 대해서 늘 관심을 가지고 있고 지켜보고 있고 또 다양한 북한 인권 침해로 인해서 일어나는 문제들에 관심을 가지고 그것을 해결하고자 하는 이러한 의지가 유엔은 분명히 있습니다. 그래서 올해 11월 달에도 북한의 인권 문제를 주제로 다루는 이러한 그 회의들도 유엔에서 지속적으로 열리고 있고요. 그 속에는 오토 본비어라는 미국의 시민이 북한의 인권 침해 가해자들에 의해서 사망된 부분도 유엔이 분명히 기억하고 있다는 것입니다. 그래서 앞으로 지금 뉴욕시 교통위원회에서 오토 본비어길 지정에 대해서 긍정적으로 이렇게 그 해주시는 부분에 대해서 저희는 또다시 또 유엔을 통해서도 지속적으로 이 문제도 계속 거론할 생각입니다.
아까 말한 11월 회의에서 오토 원비어 얘기를 다룰 것이라는 건가요? 아니면 그냥 알고 있다는 건가요?
이미 유엔에서 기존에
다른
알고
건가요?
있는데
네.
11월 달에는 다양한 북한 인권 침해에 대한 문제들이 또 다뤄진다.
여기
네.
Of course, the UN has a very strong interest and keen interest in the North Korea's human rights abuses and the violations, and it has a very strong will to resolve these issues. And in the coming November, they are planning to have a session dedicated to North Korea's human rights situations, and they are well aware of the various human rights violations committed by the North Korean regime, including the Oto Wonbir incident. And if the New York Transportation Board committee can positively consider or review our petition, then we will also inform the UN about the progress that we have made, and the UN will be also involved if necessary.
Thank you. B, with regards to your comment on the precedent, I just expressing my opinion here. I think this is a little different. The Khashoggi resolution and co-naming that we supported, we did so on the basis of Mr. Khashoggi's, in the last point there, on his basis of extraordinary contribution in service of humanity. And while I remember Mr. Womber's story very well as it was happening, and I sympathize tremendously with his family on his loss, and I think the situation was tragic and certainly unconscionable on behalf of what happened on to his torturers in North Korea. I personally, I'm not sure that we have established the same extraordinary contribution in the service of humanity that we did with Mr. Khashoggi's renaming. So I do, while they are similar, I do think they are different. In Mr. Khashoggi the applicant had established his significant contributions in terms of journalistic contributions to humanity, and that he was executed as a result of his journalistic work.
So if I could comment, I do agree with you. That's why I kind of raised it. I think it's a different situation of what we're dealing with now. It's unfortunate. I want to extend my sympathy. to our guest speaker because of her son's situation. But there are many individuals that are involved in situations such as this. And when I look at our guidelines, I'm not too sure that this individual case actually meets the guidelines on doing a co-naming. But I did want to admit that we did do one for a different reason before.
Thanks, Pete. Maya, you had your hand up.
My question was, is there a similar application in DC in front of the embassy there? Or is this only for New York? Because Mr. Khashoggi has one also in DC.
So what was the question again? Excuse me.
Do you guys have a similar application in DC in front of the North Korean embassy there, or just here in New York City?
워싱턴 DC 쪽에도 미국 그 북한 대사관이 있나 봐요. 없어요. 거기서 했냐고 그러는데 그러면 없다고 되지 않을까요? In Washington DC, North Korea does not have any embassy in Washington DC.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry.
So I guess I want to be aspire to be Solomonic. I would appreciate if we reached out to the special reporter who replaced the previous one in 2022. It seems as though when we have two former secretaries of state that rather than a no, it would be whether or not they believe that this co-naming serves a greater purpose. And that if it's even beyond his significance for being a young person who didn't even have the opportunity to start a career, that might further the goals for human rights. So that would be my thinking.
And so that's in regards to how the.
If you know, he would satisfy the criteria as we imagine it to be, with recognizing what you said. And
and I would add, I mean, these criteria are quite vague.
Elastic.
Right, I mean, you could probably make a case for at least the first and the second one, regardless of how you want to proceed. But I don't think these guidelines are very strict or directive, right? I think it seems like, I just read them today, they're intended to give this committee discretion to do what it thinks is right. Yeah.
Good.
And I mean, you could use those, directives to decide no or to decide yes, but I think they're pretty open-ended.
Ms. Lee, I see your hands raised. Did you have a comment for me?
Comment about the comments made by other participants that you mentioned the difference between Khashoggi and Otto Warmbier, but there's another case of Rodney Davis. He was also the victim of the very violent crime, and there was a co-naming for his name, Rodney Davis, and we believe that designating the Warmbier Way would be a strong reminder for the North Korean regime about the crimes, human rights crimes they've committed. And this can prevent the other incidents or other human rights violations committed by North Korea in the future. And there is an information that North Korea would resume its tourism industry targeting foreigners, which have been suspended for the past 4 years due to the COVID pandemic. So this can occur anytime in the future. And this co-naming with the name of Otto Warmbier can be a strong reminder for the North Korean regime, and that can serve as a prevention for the future crimes committed by North Korea.
Thank you.
And I was just gonna add, it sounds like there was a move to use street co-namings to make a political statement with Khashoggi. And the question is, what is the criteria for the street naming? Like, to me, I thought it used to be, hey, someone who made a real contribution to New York City and the community. And it was about that. And it seems like maybe there was a little bit of a turn, and are we embracing that turn or not, I guess is a question.
Eric, you have a very good observation there, and I sense the same. There was a kind of dual justification in the case of Khashoggi, and the use of the co-naming for political purpose may be uncomfortable, but there was the extraordinary contribution, prior to his death that, maybe independently would have justified, the co-naming, and that's where I draw the line.
Does anyone have anything else to add? Uh,
Can we also make a response to the comment just made?
please, yes.
It's not just about a political statement. We want to raise awareness about the human rights to New York City. And by co-naming this street, it can bring more attention to the human rights situations from tourists from all across the world. But this is just not about simply co-naming a street. It will show that New York City advocates of freedom and justice and will not tolerate any human rights violations. Co-naming in itself can send a very strong message about human rights, and it can also enhance the shared sense of responsibility about human rights protection among the New York citizens who will pass by the street every day.
Thank you. Does any, I guess to wrap up, we have three options as always. We can close the discussion here and not take a position on this. We can make a motion to support the renaming, or support the position for renaming, or we can, I guess in theory, we could oppose, or we could pass a resolution in opposition. With that said, does anyone have a motion?
I did have one quick question, Jason, just new to this. What is our role? Is this just advisory?
Yeah,
or-
happy to.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so at the end of the day, it is ultimately a decision of the city council to pass a law. Bradley, go ahead.
Yeah, so what happens is, you know, the community board, if we decide to take a position in favor of the co-naming, then it goes to the appropriate council member for their office's review. In this case, it would be Keith Powers. And assuming that he's in favor of the proposed co-naming, then, and you know, assuming that the city council does like a little background check on the individual and his life, the proposed co-naming then gets included in city council legislation, which includes a bunch of proposed street co-namings throughout the city. Legislation on proposed co-namings throughout the city comes before the city council twice a year. One note I should make, there have been a couple of times when the office has seen a co-naming in our district pass through the city council, but not go before the community board. So that's happened a couple of times, but usually it's community board, then local council member reviews, then it goes before the full council. One other thing I'll say, by the way, is another option, if the committee wants, is to, you know, simply think about this proposal and return to it another month unless there's a particular time sensitivity. Not saying the committee has to do that, but that's another option.
B, I see your hand.
Yeah, so I would support not taking a position and letting it go its other course as Brendan outlined, because there have been cases where it's gone beyond, you know, the community board and stuff. But I'm just not comfortable taking a position on it, and I think that would be the more neutral thing to do.
All right, thank you, B. I don't think that's a motion. Does anyone have a, if we don't have an emotion though, that's basically what we would leave it.
Well, I would support kind of what you described, which is the continued thinking. I would, for example, see that Gail, Mark Levine, Harvey, apart from these luminaries, have supported this. And I'd like to go back to them to, you know, get their take on this without passing, without turning it down.
Is that a motion? Hold on, we can discuss that before we move on to it.
Yeah, it is, yeah, yeah.
Michael.
I actually think like it would be wise to think about like, to consider what else Otto Warmbier did before he was killed in North Korea, like what else he did before then.
Did you wanna, we could ask that,
22-year-old in the middle of LSE.
Like, what were the other contributions, like, what did he want, what was his motivation and stuff like that? And why did he go there?
so are you saying that you'd want time to consider that, or you?
Yeah, I want them to consider that.
Got it, thanks. We could, I see your hand, Ms. Lee, any other discussion? I will recognize you in a moment, I just want to see if there's anything else from the committee.
Okay, that's one question is, what was the group Otto was in? He was in a group visiting North Korea. Are you able to comment honestly on what that group is? It's just a tourist group?
그룹이 어떤 그룹인지 말씀해 주실 수 있을까요? 대학교 친구들. So his college friends. I'm not sure. He was on tour with his alma mater friends, but it was a travel, and he went there with other college students from various countries. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we also have several questions, but before moving on to the next agenda, is there time for us to ask questions?
Yes, although I'll come back to you though, I just want to wrap up discussion here before we go back to you. Maya, go ahead.
I do want to say that I do agree with B, that I think it's best for us to pass I do sympathize with the entire story, but also I am a little bit wary of what this means for like the continued future of our co-naming and stuff like that. I am a little bit hesitant to allow this to be like weaponized as political commentary in front of every embassy or consulate, excuse me, in the area. And it's nothing personal against this story, but it is, we start to open the doors a little bit. So I would be happy if it was co-named, if it went through with the city council, but I think it'd be best for the community board to remain more neutral.
Larry.
And I also share that position. It's a very, very sad and very tragic circumstance, which we all wish had never happened. Certainly want to express our sympathy and our outrage at what happened. We can be public about that now. I think that's the appropriate way to weigh in.
Just expressing my personal view as well. I agree with B that I think it'd be best if we did not take a position on this. That would be my personal preference. Anyone else? Anything to add? We'll recognize Ms. Lee once again. If you have anything else. So you said you had some questions.
We've gathered more than 200 signatures through online and offline petitions. And is there anything else that we can do to make this designation possible? That's the first question.
So I suppose reaching out to Keith Bowers' office to express the desire for the renaming.
Yeah,
I think that would be probably the outside of the coming to the meeting here. That would be the potential next step.
yeah, and and if you don't have the contact information for that office, I can, the community board office can give you the contact information for Councilmember Powers' office. So that way you can connect with his office.
Okay, then second question is that we have some plans to share some footages and very short video clips of myself participating in this meeting. Would that be okay?
It's we'll be posting the video to YouTube, public as record as far as I'm concerned. I see no issue with you using it as you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so given that I don't see a motion, unless anybody would, I'll give it an opportunity to make one. I think we close discussion on this here, basically not taking a position. And then, as we said, Keith Powers' office could still, Councilmember Powers' office could still decide to take this up at their discretion. We'll pause for a moment if there's anybody else wants to make another motion on this, but if seeing none, I think we'll close the discussion here. Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. And so just to sort of wrap up, basically the committee's decided not to comment on this, to take a position either in support or in opposition to the renaming. The city council, ultimately the city council has the authority to move forward with this with or without our opinion or support. So there's reaching out to Keith Powers' office to discuss next steps would be if there's still desire to move forward with it, which I assume there is, would be the next steps. And otherwise, as far as this committee is concerned, we will close the topic of that appointments. Thanks again. Thank you very much for coming to us and for your time. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for everybody for that. Moving on the agenda, we have the chair's report. I have a few things. First off, at the closing of July's meeting, June's meeting, we had passed a resolution on Second Avenue on expanding the bike lanes to wider and offsetting the bus lane from the curb to one offset lane. That is done on a large stretch of Second Avenue. I took it on my way here from the north direction to the board office today for the first time. I think maybe I've taken it before, but anyway, I took it today. It's quite lovely biking on. I want to thank DOT for implementing that. I think it's great. I have noticed that it has not been implemented south of like in the 20s, around 23rd Street, but I think a bit north of 23rd Street. I was going to ask Colleen the status of implementing it through the rest of the district, which was originally part of the plan, and inquire as to why it has not happened. We can do that offline. But I think it's great. Check it out if you haven't. Also, the bus lanes appear to be, in my casual observation, more cleared as a result of the redesign. And also in July, we passed a resolution in support of the First Avenue Tunnel, bike lane in through the tunnel. The work is near, as the paint has gone down on the ground. They have not yet put in the Jersey barriers from my last observation, unless that has changed this evening or the last couple of days. No.
Not yet.
Okay, but it looks like it's coming together nicely. I'm very excited to see that coming through. I was pleased to see that DOT move forward with the project. I'm excited to see it finally get implemented. Yes, other item. So this is something that I wasn't aware of until recently myself, and I suspect most members of the committee are not familiar with. There is a the East Midtown, brother, could you help me out here? East Midtown Public Realm Improvement.
The East Midtown Public Realm Improvement Working Group, I want to say.
Governing group. Yes, we'll just refer to that as the governing group here from here forward. So this governing group exists, manages a budget to support public realm improvements in a section of East Midtown. CV6 has a seat at the board, which I fill. Again, the chair of the transportation committee generally fills, and I currently do. The governing group has recently submitted an RFP for a redesign of the Park Avenue medians, or issued an RFP for the redesign of the Park Avenue medians within the zone of the governing group. So basically, we're looking for the governing group is looking for proposals for how those medians can be redesigned. There's an intention as part of the project to widen the medians. And the intention is to take one traffic lane from the east and west sides of the median. But the RFP is basically to request designs to how to utilize that space and how to rethink the Park Avenue medians. So the RFP is out. It's pretty vague. It doesn't really. It gives a lot of leeway for the submitters to come up with their own ideas and suggestions. In next meeting, I would like us to discuss this in a bit more detail. And to potentially pass a resolution asking for specific things that we would want to see in that design. And then that would allow, as we're looking at the designs that are proposed, us to have a position and of specific things that we want to see and consider those things that we desire to see as a part of making that final selection. Speaking for myself personally, I'd love to see a bike lane included in that plan. That isn't specifically in the RFP to ask for that. It's pretty vague. I think that's something we can consider amongst, certainly I think other uses, including benches, seating areas, would be helpful and appropriate, but I would like us to, we'll definitely see the hands. I'd like to see us discuss this in our next meeting and take a formal position so that we could influence that decision. Larry.
I would propose that what you just suggested about the bike lane be in the resolution that is discussed next month.
Yeah, I'll come with the resolution sort of that I'll circulate ahead of time. Yes, but we can discuss it further then. Right.
I'm in full support of that, 100%, but isn't that outside of our jurisdiction?
Yes, we have a small section of Park Avenue, and that is why we have the seat on the board there.
Yeah, up to East 40th Street.
Right, but this is I think it's gonna be up here.
Yeah,
It's
north of the viaduct.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I
fully support it.
So I think
With you 100%.
it's an interesting point. Okay, so
Could we suggest this as Friends of CB5?
well, okay, so I believe the governing group's bounds somewhat overlap in the portion that we have jurisdiction over. So despite the fact that the redesign is happening outside of our district, we have a seat on this board.
Is there a bike lane on Park Avenue?
There are no bike lanes.
No, I'm just saying this would just be for like 4 blocks.
It's longer.
What do you
Okay.
mean?
No, I was just thinking of the usefulness of a bike lane. Or if it's reserving space for a bike lane, if you end up creating one.
So
Yes,
it would be
yeah.
fairly limited.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
the objective in the long run is to make the median expansion all the way up Park Avenue. There's also the possibility that while the median widening project is in the initial phase of this is limited, it's not to say that DOT couldn't implement paints on the ground in the absence of
Yeah.
the median to put in a bike lane on the rest of the corridor.
Yeah, anyway, just making the point of reserving space maybe as opposed to, yes.
But yeah, we should discuss this more next meeting. It's also an interesting point that I haven't really fully absorbed. But I think we can still take a position on it. That I will have a vote as a representative of CB6.
But then can CB5?
They also have a
on
seat.
First Avenue?
Yeah, I
Well-
think it presents a difficult position for us, so we have to really look at that.
Okay, we could.
I'm sure you can present them ideas and then you will still have to vote on what they want.
We could perhaps be a little delicate on
Yeah.
our
Maybe
phrasing.
not so strong.
Yeah, Larry.
We have looked at this section of Park Avenue, which is within our district, in a different context, where the MTA was considering putting in some ventilation shafts, which was going to be a major construction project. That has not moved forward yet, and it may come back to us at some point in the future. And we were examining what would be in this streetscape. In addition to that, we have the Park Avenue Tunnel, which is under there, which will most likely require some rehabilitation.
Wasn't it just rehabilitated? If I'm not mistaken, the Park Avenue Tunnel. No, I think like it was closed for several years and it just reopened. So I think that's done.
Well,
Okay.
in any case, we may have some proposals to redesign the more narrow central median. We've had art displays there in recent years, which have been very well received. And I think having a discussion, even if we don't pass a resolution with respect to maybe encouraging CB5 to consider having a bike path, still could be within our purview, because we as cyclists from this district will use that bike path.
And I was going to sort of separately, wasn't gonna bring this up, but since you mentioned the tunnel, this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it's a little bit I will be interested to see the results of the First Avenue tunnel and how that works. We should see how successful that is. I think it presents an interesting opportunity to potentially request some more treatment on the Park Avenue tunnel.
Maybe do the same, you're saying?
Yeah, this is a little bit, I appreciate of a radical suggestion, but I think it's only one lane of traffic. It's fairly wide. I think there may be an opportunity to potentially have a bike lane through that tunnel as well.
Tunnel was two ways. It originally was a trolley tunnel.
Was it two? Is it two ways?
It was a trolley tunnel, so trolleys went both directions.
Interesting. And yeah, as you point out, there's no bike lane on Park Avenue today. So if it's successful and utilized and doesn't impede on traffic on First Avenue, it might be interesting for us to advocate for that on Park Avenue.
I think for us, where we should tackle is right here.
Yes.
This is our jurisdiction. If they're getting median up here, we can widen the median here.
And notably, the tunnel exit is our jurisdiction there. So we have,
39th.
I believe that is correct.
39.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
that well.
Yeah, so we have a legitimate claim to provide opinions and recommendations on them.
You can have secondary and primary.
Yes.
More secondary, that's okay.
Okay, and anyway, also as it relates to the public realm, just as so people are aware of that and our involvement in that, I'll send out some more information to the committee. But feel free if you have other ideas for things that we want to bring to that group, projects, ideas. It's something we should be aware of and potentially more a part of advocating for things that we might want to see from them to fund or projects we want to see them implement. I guess particularly in the areas that are within our district, ideally. So that's it for my report. Moving on to old or new business. I did have a item to bring up, but I'll open the floor if anybody else has anything else before I do that. Larry?
Well, this is something of an overlap with our waterfront land use waterfront committee. It's something I wanted to bring up at the last one of their meetings, but ran very long. The status of the floodgates and who's going to be maintaining those floodgates in the future is something that I'm anticipating will be within the purview of the Department of Transportation. is going to have to be slid open and closed across various public streets. And I think we should become more involved in the discussion because that construction is almost complete in our area. The other issue that I thought should come up is to get an update on the pinch point near the Con Ed plant. And we haven't had any kind of a report since last year. And so I would just want to keep those in the discussion.
I would like to see those primarily live with the waterfront committee, the pitch point, although I'm strongly personally invested in the movement forward of that. They had jurisdiction over it. So we can talk with Majed. I believe this is his committee.
Yeah, he hasn't been there for the committees recently.
Yeah, so yeah, but I would like to see them primarily take that up.
Sure.
I agree with you that I don't know the status.
Sure,
of that.
and of course, to the degree that DOT is going to be responsible for operating it, the issue of whether it's appropriate to have asphalt in the rail tracks is something that it's going to have to be revisited.
Yep.
Seems like the pinch point hasn't even had a design still. Proposal.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, I think it keeps going back
it's
to
been
square one.
communicated, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to make sure the money doesn't get diverted either.
I agree, it's a critical project, embarrassing the state of it as it pertains to our city as a transportation.
Just continuing with the old business, we met with the Grand Central Business District. We did a walkthrough looking for areas to pedestrianize in our neighborhood because the pedestrianized plazas are so successful next to Pershing Square. So we want to see if you guys have any opinions. We're working with them to see if we can come up with something in our district. As far as Midtown East, their group, maybe they could help us with Third Avenue because, would help to get just a teensy bit of greenification in Third Avenue, a bike lane. Anything that they could do to help push things along for Third Avenue improvement. I mean, that's their center of where they are.
Yep. Yeah, we can talk more about that.
Are we involved with street trees at all?
As a committee or?
As a committee?
And well, you probably know more than I have historically. I don't think so, but we can be street trees.
Brendan,
What about street
are we
trees?
Why do they
involved
have
in
those wood things on every
recommending
tree?
locations of street trees?
Not that I'm aware.
I think they're technically managed by the Parks Department, so there'd be maybe there's a weird overlap between the Parks Committee, but we can navigate that was there something in particular you wanted to discuss with the trees?
On the east side of First Avenue near Stuyvesant Town, there are quite a few empty street tree beds. And so it'd be worth inquiring about that. Maybe it's a service request.
Yeah, probably the Parks Department.
There's actually a form, if you Google street tree request, that Parks takes, and I was impressed by the installation of a tree on my block.
Right.
Very soon thereafter.
Well, I'm just saying that there are a very large number of these. And there may be an engineering reason why they can't be planted. That's why I think an inquiry is worth it.
Sounds like a service request.
Yeah, our office can handle that as a service request. There is a process through which street trees are requested. And then the Parks Department investigates the suitability of the proposed locations for street tree plantings. And they either are like, yes, we will plant this there, or no, we won't. And usually it's because of utilities that are too close to surface level.
And that's the question for the existing street tree beds, which already have tree guards. We just don't have trees.
I have something for the governing group. I live on 58 and a lot of the rest of our community has like nice boundaries for like the tree beds and stuff. But like here, like nothing on my street. So I don't know if it's
Tree
like
guards.
nothing.
Yeah.
They put up this year like reflective, it wasn't caution tape, didn't say caution, but the same kind of material and wooden stakes, and it doesn't stay when they do the pansies in the spring and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Nothing.
Uh,
Maybe they can.
yeah, we could look into that. That might be outside the bounds, unfortunately.
Of
I
the
think it's, I
governing
think it's a
group?
little too far north, but I could double check.
On 58th Street?
Think so technically.
I live on 58th Street.
No,
No,
not,
not
not the
community
community board
board.
bounds,
Oh.
but the
Working group.
midtown governing.
Cause I live on this side of Second Avenue. They do have little placards that say it's by the East Midtown.
Extraordinarily confusingly, that's a separate entity.
Okay.
So what you're referring to is the bid.
Okay,
I'm
so
pretty
East
sure.
Midtown is very nebulous.
Yes. But I could check. You're good.
No, just two things for new business to take up in the future is, and it's regarding the big ULURPs that are going on at Spark and Innovation, I guess they're called. So Mount Carmel Place. I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but it is sort of a tertiary road at best that separates Bellevue Park. I'm looking here, South Bellevue Park, and what will be the new building there, not Spark, the one on the other side of the street. I see no reason that that street exists at all. Like, I walk by there every day. And it's just really strange. There's a park and a lot of public space there, and they're rebuilding that whole space, like just to explore the existence of Mount Carmel Place, which we'll probably see here on the map. It's, yeah, I mean, it's lowered, it's right, I mean,
Is this small stretch here?
yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh, actually, no, it's the one,
It's 28th Street.
yeah, but it's on.
Oh,
Second
too far
Avenue.
over.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
that
here.
one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that one. It's that one.
yes.
And there's actually no through street there anymore, like in the middle of the block.
Yeah, that's a
Doesn't
plaza. if I'm not
Correct,
mistaken.
right, so I'm saying they made a plaza of the east and the west side, and they have this street that leads to nowhere. So anyway, just as they're going through this process, that's something to keep in mind. Oh, go ahead.
Eric,
I'll say the other one, yeah.
The closest experience that we have in exploring this is where Brook College
Right.
asked to
Beautiful.
close.
Yeah.
Was it East 25th Street?
Yeah, Yeah.
Between Third and Lexington Avenues. Now, if that required a demapping of the street by the city council, then they passed an ordinance and it went under the control of the adjacent building owners on both sides of the street. So if this is going to disappear over here
right.
as a legally mapped street, then something like that would be the result. So it might be helpful to formulate your questions in terms of where you would like to end up and who would be responsible
Right.
for the maintenance of that open area, if not the Department of Transportation, Department of Sanitation, and so forth.
No, that's a great point, and I'm not familiar with it. My thought was, and it'd be helpful anyone else in the committee, for new businesses, they're building whatever, they're going through some huge rezoning to create this new life
Right.
sciences.
Right,
you
but
know,
that's only,
sensitive.
but that's only with respect to the footprint of that building.
No, agreed. I'm just saying, but to include it as part of that conversation, there is an open conversation in that area. Is
And,
my
and that
point.
could be the
Yes.
answer to the maintenance
Yes.
and.
Yes. Yeah.
The developer of the space could be
Yeah.
charged with.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I'm just saying that there's a big
We
project
just had
that's
the
gonna
public,
happen.
we
Yeah,
just
yeah.
had the public hearing at the.
No, but this is
no,
different,
yeah,
because this
no,
isn't
no.
part of Spark, right?
No, this,
No.
it wasn't public hearing. I sent this comment in. I'm sure it
Was,
wasn't. It
No,
wasn't.
this was the
Yeah.
place
Yes.
across the street, which
Yes.
also had a public.
Oh,
Yes,
okay, sorry.
and I sent that as a public comment into the whatever. Yeah, yes,
Right.
maybe it wasn't brought up, but yes. So I think that's one of them, right?
Right, and it'll ultimately be decided by the city council.
Yes, yeah, but just something for us to maybe make a point on if anyone wants to take a look at it. And I just say the corollary to that is at Spark, is the same thing on 25th Street, but 25th Street is more of a used obvious location, but you have Astor Levy across the street, and you have Spark here, and you have this street that is honestly super dangerous, 25th Street coming around, and it'd be really nice to connect those two spaces, Astor Levy and Spark.
And Astor Levy was demapped. It was a public street where
Right.
people would park their vehicles in front
Yeah.
of the VA and
Right.
across the street from the
Yeah.
recreation
Yeah.
center.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, people whip off the FDR Drive there, my kids cross the street there, much to my chagrin, it's not a wonderful place. It seems like we're trying to create a lot of public space there with Spark. So it's just something to consider, those two roads during these big rezonings and city council things, just to see if we have a point of view. So new business for another time. I just wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could definitely take a
Yeah.
position on that. We could connect offline,
Yeah.
and about it specifically, but I would challenge you and request that you put out a proposal, and like a draft resolution, and then,
Agreed, I would
let's put it
probably
on
need
the
some
agenda.
help. I'm new to this.
Yeah.
Just sort of throwing out there
Let's
an
talk.
idea
Yeah.
that I see as a possibility, and you could all guide me to whether it's misguided, guided, or needs new direction. I just putting it out there.
I
Yes.
personally,
Yes.
a fan of, pedestrianizing more streets in our district.
Pedestrianizing.
Yes.
Pedestrian, whatever.
So that's
Yeah.
it, just to bring to attention, that's it.
Yes, but yeah, no, let's
Yeah.
talk about getting, something on the agenda.
Yeah.
Sounds great to me.
Okay.
All right, any other new business, new or old business? One thing real quick that I forgot to mention in my report, the UN, the East River Esplanade, on the side of the UN. Very exciting news this past week, that an RFP went out from EDC to build the extension of the Esplanade adjacent on the river past the UN to connect the Greenway. This was like 10 years in the making. The goal is 2028 to have this completed, which sounds aggressively soon, but would be fantastic if that were delivered on time.
Good question.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this a design build or are there proposed plans for which they're just putting out for bids, construction bids?
Trying to remember the specifics of the RFP. I think they were looking for construction and project management. I don't know if they specifically mentioned if it was.
So
design build.
maybe based on the renderings I've seen,
Yeah.
they were going to replicate what they've done in the East River Greenway
Effectively,
that we were very involved with.
Yeah.
So then it wouldn't be an entirely new design and it could move forward pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's my understanding from reviewing the RFP was basically like they provided the specifications from the vision that was built 10 years ago, and was like, it was put out for bid to manage and build the project to the vision and the renderings that they had put out, which to your
So
point
it
is,
can get done quicker.
yeah. Long overdue.
2028.
So.
Okay, did you have something to add?
My question was, how long is the gap?
Oh, so right now there's a gap, well,
I'll show on the map there.
Cause these
Yeah.
two are not connected,
well,
the Beekman one and the new one.
uh,
Yeah, we have to go off
At
back onto the
at
main one.
54th Street, there's a bridge that goes across. And that's the beginning of the gap. And then there's over here by where 42nd Street just south of 42nd Street.
Would that include redoing the one here in Beekman? That one's kind of rough.
that's the part before the bridge or the ramp.
Yeah, it's like you cross over the FDR on the
Yeah.
bridge, yeah.
Okay.
wherever it is.
There would probably be a ramp around here around 48th Street that would come from this outboard.
Cause there's like a plaza
park.
or something.
There's a stretch like here that's disconnected from
Right.
the new development, but it's on the,
Yeah, I think that the idea would be to have an entirely separate esplanade that's
Brand new.
over the water. And then bridging at a place
Yeah, the
around
Esplanade.
48th Street, and there was supposed to be a node where people would gather, a little wider area, that the bridge. And then there would have to be a connection at the Waterside Pier. I think that would be.
But would it connect to this, like, cause there's the new one?
There would be an upland connection around here at 48th Street.
Okay, but the existing one.
The
Would they
existing one
redo it?
begins at 54th Street, but those areas on the,
That's the
uh,
new one on 54th.
yeah, those things adjacent at around 52nd Street.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's a bridge there.
right. goes over the
That's gonna be
driveway.
too expensive and too difficult to make handicapped accessible.
Well, yeah, cause I know you go down, so I guess my question.
There are a lot of steps there, and so I think they're just not going to include that.
But that's my question. Are they gonna connect it to the new one? Or are
I
they
don't
connecting-
think so.
Let,
I think it'll
let's take a
remain like
look.
this.
Cause that one's like pretty crusty.
Yeah, I know what you're referring to.
And that's why they don't want to spend the money, because
Right.
it's not gonna be able to, they're not gonna be able to fit it into the big picture, long esplanade
can-
along the, you know, it's,
So they're gonna build over it essentially.
no, they're basically ignore it.
I'll take a look. Let's
I
talk.
think that's what I'm
And,
saying.
well, we could talk about putting it in.
Well, I
We
don't
could
have the.
make a
connection,
recommendation
just
if there's something we.
They would need another bridge. They'd have to replace the existing bridge over the FDR.
Let me see if
I
I
don't-
could address the concern. If
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying, but it's okay.
let's take it offline, and if
Okay.
there's a change,
No,
if there's a
yeah.
position we want to take on it or request or change, we can bring that to a future meeting, but I'll take a look and we can connect.
So I'm just gonna excuse myself. First day of school tomorrow. I'm gonna go say good night.
All right.
But I apologize. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
We take a final attendance.
Yeah.
You can do
Yes.
that.
If you want to wait like 2 minutes.
Okay, it's okay.
We're adjourned.
It doesn't really
Yeah.
matter either way. Okay, any other old new business?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Sorry,
adjourn. Let's adjourn meeting is adjourned at 8:30.
Everybody was here.